Welcome to the 5th Nordic Battery Thursday and the first one of 2022. Throughout this series, we take a closer look at the growing Nordic battery ecosystem. Nordic Battery Thursdays is a joint collaboration between Innovation Norway, Business Finland, Business Sweden, and the European Battery Alliance, EIT InnoEnergy, and it is supported by Nordic Innovation. My name is Jessica Olsson, and I am the Trade and Invest Commissioner of Sweden to Norway, as well as part of our Nordic collaboration team. With me here today, I have my dear colleague Robin Peterson, Program Manager at Business Sweden's Battery Program, with the objective to build a sustainable battery value chain in Sweden and the Nordics by 2030. So Robin, are you excited to be here today?
Yes, Jessica, thank you very much. Yes, I'm very excited to be here, of course, and to listen to all the speakers that we have lined up. And the program today looks really, really interesting. Of course, I'm also even more excited maybe about the bigger picture, the transition that we're living now towards a more sustainable society and the pivotal role that batteries play in that transition. And there's a lot going on in the battery space. There's so much happening, and of course, not the least here in the Nordics. I mean, we have an ecosystem which has the fortune to be powered by green and affordable energy. It's an ecosystem which enables companies to actually meet the evolving demands of clients and customers, production requirements, but also the increasingly more stricter regulation when it comes to, on an EU level, but also a global level when it comes to sustainability and environment. And we know these environmental challenges, they're not easy. It's nothing that one individual or one company or one country can actually manage by themselves or solve by themselves. But if we work together, then we can do it. We can reach the targets that we've set out for ourselves. We can reach the reducing of the greenhouse gas emissions. We can reach the EU 2050 target of becoming an economy which is with net zero greenhouse gas emissions, for example. It can be done.
Yes, it can. And you said it, work together. The road to success will be defined by innovative collaborations, by building cross-border partnerships, international expertise networks, and localized production hubs. We can actually deliver both on commercial prosperity as well as meet the critical sustainability targets. And now, Finland, Norway, and Sweden are taking the lead, revolutionizing battery production. An ecosystem that is actively bringing together resources, skills, knowledge, investments, and materials needed for sustainable battery production at scale.
Yeah, and like you say, Nordic battery collaboration is not only about Nordics. It's also being a launch pad for future competitiveness for companies from all over the world who want to invest in the battery value chain.
Exactly, all over the world. And this is why we are organizing these Nordic Battery Thursdays, to showcase what is happening in the Nordics, but also to invite international companies and organizations to join us. And today we will take a closer look at recycling with the topic opportunities, challenges, and decisive needs of recycling. So thank you, Robin, very much, and I will see you later in this program today. So it is time to set the scene and reflect on the European battery industry. And for this, I am very happy to welcome Ilka von Dalvik, Policy Manager at EIT InnoEnergy, and one of our dear partners at the European Battery Alliance. So welcome, Ilka. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Thank you, Business Sweden, for having us on stage. And I just can compliment you on bringing this important topic up at our first Nordic Battery Thursday for this year. Taking a little bit a step back and looking at the European picture, I think we all know when we started for only 5 years ago, there was virtually no or very little activity going on in Europe, but looking at what is happening in the battery ecosystem at 2022, I think we all can be very certain that Europe has become a global hotspot for establishing battery production. We are currently looking at about 50 projects that are being announced, that are being built, that are being constructed, And of course, we do need a lot of material to fuel this industry. And as you can see on the next slide, we made a calculation on how much we actually can contribute from European resources to fulfill the demand that we established at 550 gigawatt hours for 2025 and 1 terawatt hour for 2030. And as you can see, there's a lot still to do on the raw material side, which is of course a big issue, but also downstream on the recycling, there is still an important gap that needs to be filled. And there are certain challenges connected to the battery industry to actually ramp up, because we know that there will be a lot of batteries coming back to the market. It is still not there. We will still need to rely a lot on production scrap for the short term before we actually can address the end-of-life batteries. There's also a matter that not all the material that we see here is actually recycled in Europe. There's also the question of material leakage outside of Europe, but not to add up on this very dull tone. Let's look at how the Nordic countries can contribute to fill some of those gaps. On the next slide, you see on the left-hand side the penetrations of EVs in the different European countries, and a part of from Germany and France that have a lot of population density, of course. I think the Nordic countries are very well off when it comes to looking at when to expect the first end-of-life batteries coming back to recycling. The right-hand side is a snapshot on ongoing recycling projects in Europe, and you can see that it follows the pattern of the EV penetration quite well. There is some activities going on in Germany and France, but there's a lot going on in the Nordic countries, and they're well advanced as well. And it's all from new startups, from established recycling companies, but also companies coming from abroad that we will hear later from today, that will help to fill the gaps from the previous slide. So I'm very happy to be here on stage and see what the Nordic countries can contribute to the European battery ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilka. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker today. With us we have Truls Glovsan, Head of Friends of the Earth Norway. And Truls, you are leading one of the largest, or the largest, Norwegian environmental organization, founded in 1914 and with about 28,000 members, which is very large for Norway, of course. So welcome to Nordic Battery Thursdays, and I will now hand over to you for your perspective on the battery industry.
Thank you very much for that. Actually, we have grown the last few years, so we're now 37,000 members because of a lot of increased interest. When it comes to batteries, of course, we agree that sustainable, good, environmentally friendly batteries are needed as part of an electrified future, and acknowledge that we cannot build all of them just by using the batteries that already exist. So we totally agree that it's a very important challenge to develop good batteries and ensure good recycling of them. Next slide is just a few list of key issues about us, Naturvernforbundet. As you said, more than 100 years, democratic nationwide, 100 local and country branches, and we are sort of trying to cover the full spectrum of the environmental problems. So not only into nature, not only into climate, not only into single issues, but trying to cover the broad issues, mostly focusing on Norway, but also with international partnerships and concerns and networks. And as I said, more batteries are needed. We can see this in particular in the example of cars, where, of course, direct electrification of transport, like efficient trains, will be absolutely smartest electrification, where battery is the second after that, with hydrogen and synthetic fuels as replacement for fossil fuels, lose a lot more of the energy content during the way. Saying this, it's of course even more important to underline that not used energy, including electricity, is still the absolutely most environmentally friendly way, and a sort of transport system based on cars only is not sustainable, has never been sustainable. But we believe that there will be, in the transport sector, some cars, some trucks that need to be electrified, but we also need to reduce the entire volume of transport. And of course, we know that batteries and electrification will be needed in many other places in our power grid system and also for industrial purposes. So batteries will be needed. That's why they need to be sustainably produced from start. This battery industry is growing rapidly, but it's still new, and that means that this new industry can do things right from start. The EU Battery Directive is a good basis. We see some lacks there about working conditions, which also is important to take into account for new industry establishments. But the main opportunity is that new batteries can be designed for recycling from the start. We must stop with this idea that we just sort of recycle when we get to the end of the chain and when we have a sort of problem that needs to be handled, because that's why we're losing material and leaking material to other places and also losing it to the environment. Of course, when we design new batteries, we also need to ensure that we use as little problem minerals as possible and try to design them for reuse of the urban mining potential. If new material is needed, there must be, of course, good design on the mines, and as a big requester of minerals, the battery industry needs to be on the forefront in demanding sustainable mining techniques. And of course, in this approach, deep ocean mining, we think is a very, very big problem that a new developing industry should not base itself on. It's of course also important. One thing is sort of design of the battery product, but the factories must be placed in the right places. We have seen in Norway when this sort of hype, everybody wants to build a battery factory. Local counties are competing against each other to offer space for placing these large factories. Often fighting against nature protection needs and food protection areas. So we believe all of these new industries needs to be placed on brownfields, where other industries have already been developed and are being abandoned. It's also important to have clear demands on energy efficiency plants, good reuse of waste heat, for example, placement close to other places which needs heat. And we must take into account that even in the Nordic region, we don't have enough power for all good and not so good ideas. Batteries are much more valuable to produce and use energy for than, for example, Bitcoin mining, electrification of oil platforms, etc. Because also renewable energy, even in the Nordic, is a very scarce resource. We suggested to our own government that in Norway that we should have sort of clear policy framework that fosters sustainable production of batteries with strong environmental criteria, taxes and bans on bad mining practices, ban of course on ocean disposal of mining waste, which the rest of Europe has, but we don't, and a national or regional siting process to avoid local competition. We also believe that we can have policy instruments on the demand side with public procurement to require green batteries and the EV subsidies that we have a lot of in Norway to also have clear requirements on the batteries. In summary, that's our Friends of the Earth Norway 9 battery industry commandments. Non-conflict mineral solutions, full recyclability as a design principle, urban mining, waste-free mining, avoid deep sea mining, site them at brownfields, and have clear policies around the use of renewable power. Of course, not all battery factory ideas are good enough either, and not all batteries are good enough, even though batteries are better than fossil fuels. So these are some of the challenges that we as an environmental movement place on our industry, understanding that batteries will be needed.
Much Truls Glovsan for this. And to say it's a new industry, we have a chance to get it right from the start, and we need to design for recyclability. Thank you so much. And the road to success we talked about initially will be defined by innovative collaboration. And this is why I am so happy to introduce our next keynote speaker, Sonja Nurmi, coordinator at BAT Circle 2.0 at Aalto University. Sonja, BAT Circle 2.0 is a great example of an holistic approach to the entire value chain of battery metals, but also a typical, I would say, Nordic type of collaboration and engagement with Europe. So welcome, Sonja, and I hand over the word to you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I am Sonja Nurmi, and coordinating the BAT Circle 2.0, which is a Finland-based circular ecosystem of battery materials funded by Business Finland. And it is a joint research project between industry and academia, and it has 15 companies, both large and SMEs, and 6 research organizations, including 4 universities and 2 research centers, working together to improve the value chain of the entire value chain of the battery metals. And well, as said, it's traditionally in Nordic countries, the universities and industry have had very good relations and could collaborate together in tackling large issues like the one we get here to get enough material for the electrification of the whole mobility system. And in the next slide, we can see that the goals for BAT Circle is to find the improved ways of manufacturing processes in mining industry, metals and battery chemicals processing, and recycling. So in order to be able to utilize all the material feeds there is in the most sustainable way possible. Because as said, recycling is one hugely important part of the value chain. But as the battery demand is growing so fast that the recycling cannot, at least in near future, cover really all the need of the battery materials. So that is also the minerals exploration and mining processes still need to be researched alongside with the recycling and new material solutions. So we can find all the possible ways to use materials and to confirm that we have a sustainable battery metal supply in Europe. And so said that Finland is very unique country in Europe in terms of battery materials. It is the only country where all the important battery materials like cobalt, nickel, lithium, and natural graphite can be found in ground. In addition, Finland's electricity production is very low in CO2 as it's mainly produced by hydro, nuclear, wind and solar. And in Finland, as in the whole Nordic countries, there is also excellent know-how in minerals and metallurgical processing and recycling. And there are several major industrial producers working in the battery field. And that mentioned that we are collaborating closely inside Finland, but Finland and Aalto University are very active in Europe as well, and the European battery field. As the European Union wants to be the pace setter for the sustainable transition, there is a lot of research going on in the battery field in Europe. And Batteries Europe, which is the ETIP, the European Technology and Innovation Platform of the European Battery Alliance. Its working group 2, which is dedicated for the battery raw materials and recycling, is led by the Professor Mari Lundström from Aalto University. And this group has worked together and published 2 roadmaps identifying the most important topics that need to be tackled for the battery raw material field. And several of these topics have already been formulated as Horizon Call topics. So the research in there can be is funded by the European Commission. And this way, working together, we can all make the difference. And that's why here you can see all the in the next slide all the professors that are leading just the BAT circle, that is the material research in Aalto University alone, and there's lots of more in the Nordic countries. Thank you.
We need to collaborate, and we need to get out of silos in any kind of way and collaborate cross industries, cross research areas, and collaborate in triple helix and so on together. Well, although the battery industry is based on traditional and very strong industries in Europe and in the Nordics, it is a new industry. You can easily say that it is the production of the battery cells and the recycling that are closing the value chain to become a value chain. And when it is a new industry, as we said earlier, we have a chance to do it right from the start, but also to have a chance to actually impact circularity and sustainability, something that traditionally the Nordics have been focusing on for a long time. So with me here today during our first round of interviews, I am very glad to have Thomas van der Meer at VTT, Ragnar Sjödahl from Northvolt Revolt, and Stefan Walter from Stora Enso. Welcome, and we will now focus on the importance of sustainability. And I start with you, Thomas. You are research team leader at VTT, the Technical Research Center of Finland. And we discussed a bit when it comes to sustainability and recycling. The lithium, manganese, cobalt, and nickel are often driving the investments within recycling. But what about the less valuable materials?
Thanks. That's a really good question, and you are correct that most often the optimization of the recycling process, especially starting from the black mass, is focused on making a process that can produce and allow you to recycle as much of these economically valuable metals. And when we look to the other parts like phosphorus compounds, fluoride, very big issue typically in materials, the graphite part, the anode, and the different organics that we have in this black mass typically, it's much more challenging to look to the value. So the initial developments have been focused on solving how to get those away so that you can produce this valuable nickel, cobalt, and lithium, for example, out of it in a pure form. But I believe that there will be a need also in the circular economy to try find new alternatives, because, for example, with the fluoride, when you are putting that as a waste out of your plant, you are of course having there also some environmental challenges. So trying to find different type of new uses for these products is definitely something that needs to be looked throughout the different industries as well, also outside of the battery field, that who could have use of it for that. But I think one undermined, or not undermined, but perhaps the biggest item that affects sustainability at the end is the energy and chemicals or new materials that we need to put into this process. And like in the hydrometallurgical process, the most common way has been to have sulfuric acid for the dissolution of the black mass, and then recovering by different means using sodium hydroxide, which results in sodium sulfate, which again is a new problem to the whole field. And while this is typically the most significant factor, for example, sodium hydroxide as the environmental input into the life cycle cost or inputs in system, VTT has been for many years already trying to find out solutions to recover the sodium sulfate back to the preliminary components, sodium hydroxide and sulfuric acid. And we have also in Finland a front runner, Finnish Minerals Group, who is looking to the industrial application of this currently. So there's plenty to do, but it's also really important to see through the life cycle costing and analyzing not only the cost but the environmental impact as well, that where to put the focus and how to make it as sustainable as possible.
Yeah, thank you. And looking at the life cycle analysis, I mean, it usually requires new levels of collaboration, cross-sector, cross-R&D institutes, and also with the startup community, of course. But what would you say is the impact of life cycle analysis, and how common is it now?
Yeah, that's also a great question. So Sonia just presented Batch Circle 2, where also VTT is part, and we just finalized a report to the consortium where we had an overview of the different aspects of life cycle assessment, and also what has been the focus. And quite as a conclusion from that report, quite many of the studies and LCA analysis are focused to a cradle to gate type of approach. So looking to the actual battery manufacturing part, but the whole cradle to grave type of approach is less investigated. And I think while there's plenty of that work already done on certain fields, especially the recycling part definitely is an area that needs to grow. It's not an easy task, but we need different type of real primary data to feed in and give comparable data to all of the partners or to all of the participants in this life cycle analysis. And why it is especially important to understand it is that while this is a developing area, there's plenty of alternatives still to be done. Life cycle analysis is a really great tool to find out the actual pain points and what is actually significant. Like I was saying just previously about the sodium hydroxide reuse in the process or recycling these chemicals. So put the effort there where it's mostly needed. But I think in general, there's plenty of work being done, but there's also plenty to do still on the life cycle part.
Thank you, Thomas. But it sounds like we are on it. We have sustainability in focus, looking at effective or efficiency throughout the recycling processes, and also all over throughout the life cycle, through the life cycle analysis. Thank you, Thomas. And then over to you, Ragnar Sjödahl. You are Director of Recycling Operations at Northvolt Revolt. And Revolt is Northvolt's recycling program, which was launched in December 2019. And
yes.
So, Ragnar, what is your perspective on recycling within the battery value chain?
I think Thomas took up a lot of good examples, but I would say that to continue this and have a sustainable development of this, because we need to do that, we by using recycled material, we can of course first save a lot of energy, which is important, but also we need to combine several of the sustainable goals, the 17 goals, and I think growth with sustainability, if we combine these two, it's extremely important to recycle material. So I think these are some of the most important. And then we have seen a lot of fluctuation in pricing of these metals that are in in the NCM batteries, for example, that we are producing. And I think it's really, I also think that we can see a more stable price situation with also recycling. So there are many reasons, but I think mainly sustainable and energy savings.
And what is your opinion? Are all materials target for recycling?
So the simple answer for a sustainability nerd there is to say yes, of course. But as Thomas said in the beginning, they are some of them are profitable. So that is easy to explain to everybody to get investment to do that, and that makes sense. But some of them are less. As you said, the carbonate from electrolyte, for example, is less. But we are working on all streams, and we see that we must be able to recycle everything. You mentioned the graphite, for example. If you would have asked me 2-3 years ago, I would say it was not possible. Today we have very good collaboration with another speaker that will come later today from Norway, Vianode, and I think it looks really promising what we can do together there. So I think the more we work with these questions, we will find solutions. But if we go, for example, for new chemistries, LFP, for example, where there is less economical drive in the recycling, then I think we need legislation that tell us that drive this forward.
Thank you. And a last question, what does recycling mean, or what are your thoughts concerning ensuring independent supply chains?
Everybody follow what is happening now, of course, and we at Northvolt, we want to produce the most sustainable or the greenest battery, and then of course it's very important that all material have been produced in a very sustainable way. So we follow up with all our suppliers. I think we have said that we should not buy cobalt, for example, from some countries that don't produce, that where we can't have control over the production. And today with the war in Ukraine, I think it's even more obvious that we have to be follow up this in a very good way. And recycling will definitely make this, it will make it better to have control here. And I think it's necessary to work with this.
Thank you very much, Ragnar Sjödahl. Maybe we can conclude that sustainability is it's environmental, it's an environmental issue, it's a social issue, and it also needs financial sustainability to drive the business forward. Well, moving on, sometimes sustainable materials actually grow right in front of you, but it takes innovation to upgrade it. Stefan Walter, you are Director Bio-Based Carbons at Stora Enso. And lignin, it is the world's second most abundant biopolymer after cellulose. And using lignin as an anode material would not demand any further forestry. So welcome, Stefan. And what could the impact of lignin in batteries be?
Yes, thank you for having me here. The project or the platform that we're building based on lignin is part of a larger innovation initiative that Stora Enso had been running for many years, and it's actually quite exciting to be able to connect our raw materials and our side streams and our processes into this growing and violently growing industry that will drive the electrification of everything. Our aim is, and we're on a good path, to provide a bio-based carbon material which can be used on the anode side of lithium-ion batteries and possibly also other chemistries in the future, and thus, offering a solution that does not require mining or that does not require the processing of petro-based raw materials, and thus giving our contribution to making the battery value chain and the supply chain into the battery making more sustainable, greener, if you like, and becoming part of that. Yes.
Thank you. So, and how could this affect, talking about the world we live in today, but how could this affect the need in Europe to ensure not only, well, supply chains, but also sustainable supply chains moving on?
Yeah. So as part of this industrial revolution that you've been, mentioning here, it requires that we all in all industry types think about what can we do in order to stay, at the pace of time, and what contributions can we actually do that makes sense. And it's part of this sustainability topic of ours that we consider all aspects of sustainability. So it's LCA driven to know where it hurts most, that we don't focus on that, or that we actually make our products more sustainable. Coming from a legacy industry that has classical roots in recycling thinking, and that gives us a bit of a mindset advantage. But of course, it takes quite a bit of innovation and internal reorientation to go into new industries. Becoming part of the supply chain and to anodes, of course, we hope that we can leave our dent in the universe of supplying these sustainable raw materials into the battery value chain, and together with players in the Nordics, but in also in Europe and globally, this is on a good path. And basically, we're moving the mining from underground to above the ground into the tree cycle and not into the fossil cycle.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And it's true what you say. In this industrial transformation or revolution, we all need to and should think about what can we do. And the forest industry and your industry is a legacy that we have in the Nordics. And it's important that, and it's wonderful just to see how this still keeps contribute to the sustainability in additional industries. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here today and for your perspectives.
Thank you.
We have now heard insights from some of the key players within the Nordic battery ecosystem, from Sweden, from Finland, and from Norway. And this is an ecosystem, as we said earlier, that is actively bringing in bringing together international resources, skills, knowledge, investments, and materials needed for battery production, sustainable battery production at scale. But what is the importance of this Nordic collaboration? With me now, I have my dear colleague, Jani Heinonen. You are Director Global Invest at Business Sweden. So Jani, what are your reflections on the Nordic cooperation?
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, this is a really important moment again, I think, for us to really increase this cooperation that we have already done for almost 2 years. I think what we see right now, of course, is just an acceleration of the shift in the geopolitics that have been going on, now just only really accelerated by the war in Ukraine. So this really sets up a need, especially on the higher level, for the security and defense agenda of Nordic countries. But that also drives very much the economic cooperation, the need for an economic joint agenda also. The need to have the new supply chains, raw material supply, energy supply. All these issues are affecting, of course, also how we look at the battery industry and the cooperation in the Nordics. So really, really important things going on here. But then also, we are very happy to see that a lot is happening between the Nordic countries, and especially between Norway, Sweden, and Finland. We just had earlier this month, we had the official royal visit by the Norwegian Crown Prince and Princess, who brought with them hundreds of Norwegian companies, and we had a really good, we can say, a business dialogue that will just start again of many new things. And just these past 2 days, we had the official state visit by the President of Finland, also bringing the top leaders from the Finnish industry to meet with the Swedish top industrial leaders and to discuss how this economic integration can go further. So I think what we really see here is that we have gone from maybe talking about cooperation, really like walking the talk now, and really things are happening, and then things are going around us in the world just solidify the need to do this together. So what it comes to us, like the trade promotion organizations, investment promotion organizations, we will of course do our best to really support the Nordic companies in being able to cooperate more, to do more business together, to integrate more together. So this has just been the starting point for us, and these kind of webinars are excellent for us to change information. But we are also going more into real action, and we are really listening to the Nordic business community, what the needs are both here in the Nordics to really build a better business ecosystem, especially for batteries, but also what should we do together abroad in faraway markets also to increase our export efforts. So I really think that we see just the beginning of a very deep economic integration between the Nordic countries.
Thank you, Jani. I mean, it is well, very important collaboration, and we do walk the talk, and we do also have well, strength that we are better together. If you conclude it like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Jani. And now, in short, we will have our panel discussion about recycling, reuse, governance of regulations, and much more. But first, we will look towards our dear neighbors, Finland.
The electrification of transportation is one of the biggest changes the world is facing right now. As electric vehicles are becoming the norm, we need more sustainable ways to produce batteries and circulate valuable materials. Finland has world-class expertise in battery recycling. Our high-ranking universities, research institutes and innovative companies form a vibrant ecosystem that is solving the challenges for the whole industry. Finland leads the European battery industry's recycling research. BatCircle, a consortium led by Aalto University, works to improve battery recycling and competitiveness of the whole value chain.
Raw materials for metals are depleting and the demand for metals is increasing, so resource efficiency is a must.
The Finnish company Fortum has a unique method for battery recycling. Their hydrometallurgical process can recover up to 95% of the critical battery metals to be reused in the production of new batteries. The method is safe, sustainable, and low in CO2 emissions.
It is for everyone's benefit that manufactured batteries contain as much as possible recycled materials in the future. This demand cannot be met only by mining more of these critical metals. We have to respond to this need with efficient and sustainable recycling.
So why Finland? Finland is a leading country in the European battery industry. We create sustainable innovations that help to push electrification further. Finland has the stable society, the world-class expertise, and the innovations to create the battery recycling solutions the world so urgently needs. We believe in world-changing ideas and turning them into global success stories. Finland works for us. Now let it work for you. Business Finland, World Ideas.
So a world of ideas from Finland, and we are so happy to collaborate with you. And we will now finally have our panel discussion, and I am glad to introduce our panel. With me here in the studio, I have Marcus Martinsson from Stena Recycling. And with me online, I have Martina Petranikova from Chalmers University of Technology, and Dr. Jan-Olov Willums from Nordic Batteries and SEM, and also Jaakko Savolainen from Fortum, starting speaking Swedish with you there a bit. Welcome, all of you. If I start with you, Marcus, you are Manager Business Area Batteries at Stena Recycling. And Stena Recycling is currently establishing 7 new battery centers across Europe. And in addition, you have a collaboration with Johnson Matthey for your new phase 2 facility. So a lot is going on. I hope I got it all correct. But being a true European actor, what are the key aspects from your perspective on the upcoming EU proposal on regulation on batteries?
Yes, thank you. Very nice to be here, by the way. Now, the key aspects in our perspective, is to have an even playing field throughout Europe. And not only about the wording in the legislations, but also the enforcement of the legislations. It's a great concern for us if we look at existing mature waste legislations and regulations. We can see that in the case of the WE directive, that is then the legislation for the recycling of electronic waste, it has only a penetration level of 34%. So 70% almost of all electronic equipments in Europe are not recycled within the established systems. The same goes for the current battery regulation, where we do have a penetration level of approximately 44%. So more than 50% of all the batteries are ending up somewhere else. And the same goes for the current end-of-life vehicle legislation, where we have a penetration level of approximately 50-54% on a European level. So it's not only about the wording, but also about the enforcement. That is of crucial importance for us as a commercial actor investing heavily in a capacity. And if 50% of the market is to disappear in front of our eyes, we will have a harder time being commercially sustainable in the market. So yeah. Yes, sorry.
An even playing field, and now I just lost it.
Yeah.
An even playing field, and the governance or the enforcement of the regulation is really important.
Yes, yes, very much, I would say. And we can see classically there is a big difference between different parts of Europe, how the enforcement is handled. But if Europe does not act as one, the entire idea of keeping and building an European environment for or a value chain for battery materials will fall apart, because we are never stronger than our weakest link. So it's very important, I would say, to have this even playing field.
Going over to you, Martina Petranikova. You are docent industrial materials recycling at Chalmers University of Technology. And you came to Sweden in 2013 to stay for 1 year. Now it's 9 years later. And during these years, you have been part of key recycling projects with very interesting partners and main players here in Sweden and beyond. Please tell us more.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation. That it's true that I came here 9 years ago, and I was supposed to stay for 1 year only. And I came here actually to work on the recycling of nickel metal hydride batteries. But in that time, when I was working on that project, then also the e-mobility and all the activities around the e-mobility have already started here in Nordics. So it was very active area, and it was very good area to work in. And I did my PhD in the recycling of lithium-ion batteries, but the portable ones. So then I can actually use a lot of knowledge from my PhD study here in Sweden for the recycling of electric car batteries. So that's how it all started. And as you said, we have had a lot of projects. We have had a lot of, and we still have a lot of projects with the cooperation, very close cooperation with the industry, Swedish and also from Finland, and also from other countries.
And we are so lucky that you stayed with us, and because these are strategic projects that we need to move on. Going over to you, Dr. Jan Olav Willums, you are the founder of SEM AS and chairman of Nordic Batteries. But you are also a true visionary within electric mobility and an impact investor in numerous pioneering companies, such as REC within solar, Think within EV, Move About, EV car sharing, and SEM batteries for ships. But please tell us more how you in Nordic Batteries work with reuse, and what are the key aspects when you work with reuse?
Yeah, the background why we got involved in that is that we saw an opportunity. As an investor, you always look at opportunities to provide batteries for those companies who maybe are too small or not manage to order 10,000, 100,000 batteries a year like the car industry. So the whole idea of the initiative was, can we assemble very much customized batteries in certain areas? We do that as a joint group. We have received 7 million euros in support by the Norwegian government under a environmental green platform program. And the three partners are, on one side, ZEM, the company I founded, and Nordic Batteries, who's doing actually the battery assembly, and Kongsberg, who is providing digital knowledge and the whole idea of running Industry 4.0. And that is very important. ZEM, who is today part of Volvo Penta, has now provided over 70 vessels with the battery equipment, each time looking at what do we have to adapt in order to really meet these specific requirements. And we believe that knowledge of understanding and adapting to a specific aspect is very important. In that process, we saw, and also from my old experience when I was running the first electric car company in Norway many years ago, we saw that if people say, oh, this battery has now reached 80% of its capacity of restoring, it's great. What do we do with the remaining activity? And that is obviously a very difficult task, because you really have to understand what is the continuous life, what is the possibility of using that battery for another purpose. So it's really horses for courses, as the British always said. You have to adapt that. And that's why we took the initiative, all three of us together, to develop a systematic approach to analyze batteries, review them if they can be used for other things, eventually take them apart, and otherwise be sure that they can be recycled. But we always try to maximize the intermediate step from not being perfect anymore for the purpose, or to it has to be recycled. So we try to add the sustainability aspect by an area of reuse if possible.
Reuse if possible, because sometimes you take a battery out when it got 80% left, but what does 80% mean? And that's a quite difficult answer. Going also to you, Jaakko Savolainen from Fortum. You are commercial director of the business line batteries, and Fortum is a European energy company, and you are investing in new recycling facilities and having a broad network all over Europe, so also a true European company. What, well, from your point of view, what are the key drivers that makes you invest so heavily in recycling?
Of course, looking at only from the commercial perspective, so we see that there's a clear market demand for the recycling and for the recycling services as such, and even growing in the future. But for sure, even more important is that there's a demand for the raw materials we produce from the recycled. And that's also kind of the market is demanding like naturally the recycled content, but I think the legislation is going to that direction as well, that there will be a demand from regulation side to kind of have more recycled content in the batteries. And then when we are looking at the technologies in our investments, so we are looking for quite a lot of the CO2 footprint of the kind of a complete life cycle of the battery, at least on the recycling side where we are working in our company.
So also from the commercial perspective, I mean, you're mentioning it, all of you from the company side, it needs to be also financial, well, financial stable or sustainable to actually invest. And with that in mind, Martina, I go back to you. And we discussed also earlier today, but how important is the value of the critical materials when it comes to the investment in recycling and thereby the market development?
I would say that it's quite critical and quite important, because what we can see, and it's of course understandable, that battery producers, they try to decrease the amount of the critical and then also valuable elements in the batteries. But then when the batteries come back for the recycling, then sort of there is nothing good left for the recyclers. So if we are decreasing the amount of, for example, cobalt in the batteries, we are also decreasing the motivation for the recycling. We of course still have to do it to have enough materials or to support the demand. But it is also something which is important for the recyclers, that they can have a profit from the metals they recover in their processes. So I think that it would have been much better for the sustainability to actually keep those valuable metals in the batteries, and then just be sure that we get them back in the collection system, and then that we can recover those metals and use them again.
Thank you. And Marcus, what is your perspective on this, how the value of recycling end product versus the reuse into other materials, or what also Martina is talking about?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, I would say. And I think we should look at it in from two angles. One angle is if the recycling business of its own is a standalone business that should generate a profit based on the raw material value and keeping the raw material value higher than the production cost. The other way to look at it is maybe the recycling industry is providing a service that is returning materials with positive or negative values back to the industry. And if we look, classically, we have always been looking at the recycling industry as a standalone business that should do profit on the material value. Maybe we should start to rethink. Maybe we are a service provider, returning materials. But then comes the question, who is responsible for the materials, especially then, as Martina is saying, the materials that do not have such a value that it can stand to the production cost of the refining, the recycling process.
So who is responsible? And then also having the demands of recycle as much as possible, but at the same time be profitable. And the regulations are not set yet, and also need to be enforced. So Jaakko, if I go back to you again, from your perspective, what are the key market frameworks that need to be in place to get this new industry sustainable and circular?
I think Markus pointed really well about the kind of really the service what us recyclers are producing to our customers, and I think the framework is putting really the framework on the service what we are producing, and we would like to kind of see more demand from the regulation side as well to be put on the producers of the batteries and to us of the recyclers as well, to kind of not lose any of the, especially the valuable raw materials in the recycling processes, and have the recycling processes sustainable as they are as such as well. So this is, I think, higher recycling rate is I think beneficial for all parties.
And coming back to that, Jan-Olof, if I come back to you, when we discussed, you said from cradle to cradle. We have to think from cradle to cradle all the time. And when it comes to reuse, how is the reuse developing at the moment? And would you say there are some types of batteries that are more suitable for reuse than others?
Yes, we have focused on industrial batteries in our activity, which means batteries which have been in trucks, in vessels, in ships, and in buses. There we have the chance to have a certain life analysis. What is important for both recycling but also reuse is we know as much as possible of the history of a specific batteries. If we only have if we have 1 month of information before the battery is taken out of an operation, that always gives us a much better insight which part of the battery is very good and can continue, which one is not so good and which one should be replaced. So that analysis, preferably from the very cell production and through the whole value chain, is important. Also important afterwards to see what can we take out and give to the recycler in a very defined way. We have a number of models which simulate what we expect the performance will be of specific cells and submodules, and that information we'll be happy to provide further to the next partner in the value chain.
That is so important.
And I like very much the comment about being a service. So we also regard ourselves as a service. Before you go to recycling, we can provide a service to battery owners to do something else. It's a very interesting point which came up.
Yeah. No, very good to think like a service company instead, and then also maybe be treated like one when it comes to all the frameworks around it. And as you say, Jan-Olof, it's so important is to know when batteries is going to come into reuse, but also into recycling, what is actually in the battery, what has the lifetime been like, how has it been used, and that's why a battery passport and so on is so critical moving forward. I will take one more round around this digital physical table for you to comment. One last comment. So over to you, Jaakko Savolainen. What would your last comment be? And maybe also if you consider the timeline, are we on track in the Nordics and in Europe?
Yeah, I think we are on the recycling side. We are on track, and of course I believe we are on track on the kind of there's a lot of companies building recycling capacities in the Nordics, and pretty much all of the players here in this event here, and we see the good collaboration with the companies and as well for sure kind of what the sustainability is really well taken care of, and so we have good CO2 free energy available here in the Nordics to kind of support the EV adaptation and therefore kind of the e-mobility and after that the recycling as well. So I think we are well in track.
So making use of the investments in recycling, the stable and green and usually cheap energy that we have here in the Nordics, and our way of collaborating. Martina, over to you for a comment. Of course, I want to hear about, do you also agree with the decisive need for the battery collection and logistics to get the batteries in?
Yes, definitely, because I have been saying, based on the old battery directive, which said that we have to use the best available technique for the battery recycling, I always say that we can develop the best technique for the recycling. We can really recover like 100% of the material. We can develop that, but only collected batteries can be recycled. So actually, what is a very critical step to be developed and to decide for a good strategy is a collection of the batteries. Because on the recycling side, I think that we are on a very good track. And as it was mentioned today, that we are also, for example, focusing on the development of the recovery processes for the low valuable materials, like, for example, electrolyte. So this also can be developed, but still the collection is the most important step in this whole value chain.
Key to get the batteries in. And Marcus, last comment from you. The market moves so fast, so how important is agile regulations?
I would say it's crucial. The biggest bottleneck for us in establishing our battery recycling or end-of-life services are actually the permit processes. So I totally agree with Jaakko and Martina. The industry is on track. I would really appreciate to have some more effort from the authorities. I would like them to keep their good processes, firm processes when it comes to permit applications, but they must shorten the time, because that is the bottleneck right now.
It is typical batteries: speed, scale, and sustainability. That is what we need in all,
Yes.
all across. So, Jan-Olav, one last word also from you. Do you also see that we are on track as we need to be, considering, well, the green transition that we need to do, but also the volumes of batteries that are starting to build up?
I'm not sure if we are on track, but the interest of finding solutions is important. What is relevant is that we have recycling has to be what I call multinational, and that doesn't mean multinational in the old sense. It means that in every nation we have to find a solution. Logistics is expensive. Rules and regulation to transport old batteries are expensive and difficult. So the idea is to handle locally what we can do, and then handle that in many places in parallel. The factory we are setting up in Kongsberg is a pilot plant, and our idea is to do local disassembly and local reuse analysis, and then try to do very similar entities in Sweden, in Finland, in other countries with local partners. So use joint experience, but think the logistics is expensive and full of regulations. We have to make as much as possible near by the user. And Norway, as a very large battery-oriented user, is a very good starting point.
So thank you very much, all of you, for taking the time to be with us here today. Thank you. And now, in a bit, we will have our second round of interviews focusing on the importance of innovation. But before that, we will look towards our dear neighbor, Norway. No, now it's time for our second round of interviews focusing on the importance of innovation. Because in order to constantly push for sustainability, for future competitiveness, and for disruptive partnerships and technology, we need innovation, and we need continuous innovation. So with me here today, I want to welcome William Berg from Kling Systems.
Thank you very much.
And digitally, we also have Gunstein Skomedal from Vianode and Manfred Schmidt from Li-Cycle.
Hello.
Welcome. I will begin with you, William. You are the CEO and founder of Kling Systems.
Yes.
And this is a market platform for one-stop shopping of large volumes of batteries for repurposing or recycling. And you are also an entrepreneur, founding your own startup and attracting competent team members from several countries to the Nordics. We need more of you in the Nordics. But please tell us more about your story.
Yeah, first of all, there's plenty of us. I would say that the Stockholm or the Nordic kind of startup ecosystem is booming. It's attracting talent from all over the world. It started when I was at Northvolt and their kind of recycling department, looking at how do we get batteries to recycling. And we see that getting batteries to recycling is hard because there's so many things to do with batteries. You can reuse them, repurpose them, recycle them. And the question is, where are used batteries? Where do they end up? And mapping where used batteries are and what raw materials are in them. What's the remaining capacity? What's the voltages and so on? So that is where we're coming in to see where are the batteries and where could they come? And where should they go? Taking a step back, looking at kind of the entrepreneurial part of it. I think Peter has been, or Peter Carlson, the founder of or CEO of Northvolt, has this Tesla ambitions of being kind of creator of many startups. So they have Volta Green Tech. I would consider us as being one of many future startups coming out of Northvolt.
That is so exciting. I mean, because that's the unicorns that we need, and we need it also in this new industry that we in Nordics hope to be a new basis industry as well. We really need startups. So how has it been for you building up your own company? It's not been that long, but you already have such an international team.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. I was looking back at the pitches we had just 1 year ago today, and we were then still designing a box for shipping used batteries. That was the initial idea. Like, how can we build a box that is just big enough and has all the certifications for shipping waste batteries? And from then, we've kind of moved to becoming more of a market trading platform. It's been a long journey. Now we're just hiring our 7th person on Monday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And from Spain joining 1st of June. So going to be 8. And it's Sweden has a lot of attraction. It's not too hard to get people to actually be interested in looking here. There's so much innovation going on. There's so many accelerators. Like, the startup ecosystem is amazing. If you look at Oslo as well, Finland as well. So it's not too, I would say it's a lot of support, a lot of support.
So, a lot of support and a vibrant ecosystem.
Yes.
Maybe. Would you say it's also a place where you can come and you can really use your ideas and you have people that kind of strengthen you in that, or what is the attraction?
Just taking this for example,
yeah.
Like being invited here and speaking with all those, which camera is it?
This one.
Speaking like with all of you and speaking with you and just getting all of these abilities to kind of share your visions and ideas. I don't see much of that, or there's probably, it's a lot of that here at least. Yeah. Fantastic support.
That's good. We are so proud of you, and you are an inspiration. We need more of you. Although we have a vibrant ecosystem for startups, we need more startups for the battery industry.
There's plenty of room.
Competence to come. That's really good.
There's plenty of room to do. There's so much to do in the battery industry. A lot of innovation to come.
Thank you so much, William. And there's a lot to do, plenty of innovations to come, and you're all welcome to the Nordics to join us. Bring your competence, and we are here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving over to you, Gunstein Skomedal. You are product manager at Vianode, a company founded in 2021 by Elkem. And today, Vianode is a partnership between Elkem, Hydro, and Swedish Altor. And Vianode has developed a range of synthetic graphite products for batteries. And well, you told me graphite is a vital component of a battery for electric vehicles. So over to you, Gunstein. If investments in recycling is driven by the valuable critical materials, what about recycling of the less valuable materials? Is it possible?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for the kind introduction there. And I think first of all, we in Vianode, we of course think that graphite is actually one of the more valuable materials in the battery. So should of course not be forgotten. I think this is especially true for batteries with lower, for example, nickel and cobalt content, such as LFP. So this is important to remember. Graphite is crucial. And more generally, I think that we should strive to recycle and reuse, of course, as much as technically possible. However, there is, of course, a reason for materials and components not being recycled today. One reason could be availability, that we have more than enough of the virgin material available at a reasonable cost. But here, graphite, for example, is already listed as a critical raw material in Europe, so obviously we need to take care of it. Another could be technical maturity, that we still not have developed and scaled technical solutions for a given side stream to reach kind of a scale and economical feasible business case. And I think finally, it's also in our imaginations that we are kind of limiting our thinking based on the knowledge we have. And here I think our perspective as an anode manufacturer in Vinode could be very helpful also for recycling. So to take anode material recycling as an example, we know perfectly well what the requirements are to use these materials again in a new battery. And I think we are therefore very well positioned to actually realize the potential of graphite recycling. So, yeah.
So graphite it's a decisive part of a battery, and when we think about recycling, we need to think about all. And as you said, it's not about more valuable or less valuable. It's critical for the battery, and it's there, and it is possible to recycle also graphite. But
yeah, I mean,
please.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No, over to you, Gunther.
From our perspective, you know, graphite it's roughly 15 or 20% of the weight. But one other reason why we need to recycle this, which is often overlooked, is also represent up to 25% of the CO2 emissions. So if you do LCA of a battery and you really take in values that are real based on real production of graphite today, it's quite dominating when it comes to CO2 emissions. So it's a critical material also in terms of sustainability. And that was also one of the reasons that Vinode was established by Elkem as a startup, as you mentioned last year, to really focus on these opportunities to make the battery material value chain more sustainable. And yeah, like maybe we are focusing on the virgin material first, but we really see the recycling of graphite as a medium long-term big opportunity. So this is really something we focus on. We are scaling up, as you said. We already have investors, and we are very happy to have a strong Nordic base with our owners. And we need this because we are planning a large plant now at Herøya in Norway. We're going to cut emissions already by 90-95%. So already there we achieve a lot by cutting energy consumption in the process and of course using renewable hydropower. But the remaining CO2 emissions when it comes to anode material is from the raw materials. I think it was mentioned earlier from Stora Enso, which is looking into biomaterials. But another opportunity is, of course, recycled graphite. You can really cut CO2 emissions from anode materials down to almost zero. So this is a huge opportunity and something I think we have to do. But of course, there are some challenges with graphite.
Yeah, but
so,
I don't want to interrupt you.
No, just maybe just to take some of the issues with graphite recycling as well while I'm at it, is that there's a reason it's not recycled today. And one of the reasons is that it demands a high degree of traceability. So unlike nickel, cobalt, copper, and all the other metals, which are easily recyclable, graphite is extremely stable. It doesn't change structure, morphology, anything. So it's a challenge. But we have over the years demonstrated that it's technically feasible to recycle graphite back to anode materials, and we have some really good collaborations there. I think it was already mentioned by Revolt and Ragnar that we have a partnership with Northvolt on looking at recycling of anode materials from production scrap and end-of-life batteries, and we also have other partnerships. So for us, since traceability is such a key for graphite, in particular for recycling, this kind of collaborative innovation across value chain is crucial.
That it's so important, collaborative innovation, and that it's crucial that we don't think in silos, that we really collaborate, and then we don't forget that we can do it. And it's a great innovation. And also, as in the beginning, as Ilka von Dalvik was saying, I mean, the anode material is also, it's a quite big gap between demand and supply. So there is really potential here also in the market into batteries, but then, as we said, also from cradle to cradle, we need to make sure that it's that we have the recycle with us. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Gunstein. And going then over, zooming out a bit from the Nordics, we are really happy to have you here with us, Manfred. And you are the Commercial Vice President of Europe, Middle East and Asia for the Canadian company Li-Cycle. And Li-Cycle is a producer of recycled materials focusing on lithium and cobalt, and now expanding into Europe. And you have announced your first European battery recycling facility to be in Norway, where you also do this in partnership with EcoStor and Morrow. So the word over to you, Manfred. What are your reflection on this Li-Cycle expansion to Europe? We are really glad you're coming, but tell us about your expectations on the European market.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for being with you today. Maybe before I'm going into the details here, yes, for sure, it's a bit out of the Scandinavian countries, but the EMEA, which you mentioned, and that is still a mismatching. It's Africa and not Asia. So we have a quite great group in Asia working for Li-Cycle. So this job, including Asia, would be a bit too big for me.
Yeah.
So we are focusing on Europe, Middle East, and Africa here. But coming back to your question, it's a good point, and I can really reflect back that looking a bit from outside of Scandinavia into the Scandinavian countries and specifically Norway, Sweden, Finland, there is really a great ecosystem existing and growing. And this was one of the key decisions which has driven the decision from Li-Cycle to go into this area in Europe first when we decided to go to Europe. So as Li-Cycle is the biggest recycler of lithium-ion batteries in North America at the moment, and we are very happy that our generation 3 in Phoenix, Arizona was just beginning this month opened, and we are now starting to introduce the technology to Europe. And there are two aspects. So it was for us very much driven of the EV penetration and population, and where is the status of the really adaptation of that technology in a very high level. And we see that in Scandinavia, respective in Norway, where we have a bit the situation that you are ahead of the rest of Europe a bit, which gives us a very good idea and possibility to have there this earlier taking back process in place of end-of-life batteries, because it's just those, let's say, maybe 3 to 5 years, maybe even more, you are ahead in the adaptation. And for sure, the cooperation, and that was mentioned a couple of times today, and I'm very happy to hear that, because I think growing this industry, which is mainly caused because of this disruptive change of the mobility in general, that this is really about collaboration, and it's about innovation and evolution. And coming back to that, closing the answer to that, we have now, as I mentioned, generation 3 of our recycling facility, which is the mechanical pre-processing. So we have in Li-Cycle this spoke and hub technology, splitted it and that was directly reflecting what Jan Olaf earlier mentioned. So you have to be very close to the customers and to the places where the scrap or the end-of-life batteries are then showing up, and then you have to centralize this hydrometallurgically process because it's really there. It's the key of, let's say, economies of scale. So we are building out now this mechanical pre-processing network in Europe. That's the first step. And I can tell you that even swapping over the technology now from our generation 3 to Europe, specifically to Norway, there will be additional evolution steps in the technology. So we are, with our R&D team, every new spoke will have upgrades to even push further this boundary of level of recovery rates, which is critical, that we are coming with all those aspects as much as possible close to the 100%. I have my doubts if we ever get to 100%, but it's the challenge which is open with every new facility we are building to make this more profitable / more better or much better in the recycling efficiency.
Thank you so much, Manfred. So it's about collaboration. It's also about economies of scale, as you mentioned, as also you started off, William, from Cling System, to get economies of scale, also finding the volume. And it is about being local, being close to your clients, and being efficient in what you do where. So dismantle on one or locally, and then for economies of scale, move to one area, and constantly innovate. And we can recycle a lot of parts of the battery. And as you mentioned, Gunstein, the importance of recycling the graphite as well as such a key component and a big part of the battery materials, that we don't forget that. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you. So thank you so much, and keep innovate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now I have the pleasure to welcome back Robin Peterson. So what do you think about that? We're actually at the end of this first Nordic Battery Thursday of 2022.
Yes, and wow, what a great session it's been. And I think it's been in so many interesting learnings and insights from different parts of the Nordic battery value chain. So I think it's been really, I learned a lot. Do you have any key takeaways that you, from this 1.5 hours, that you want to share?
Yeah, I agree with you of the wow factor of getting it all said and done. But I would say, yeah, we can conclude recycling is decisive, and we need the new EU regulation to actually secure that the value chain will be sustainable and circular. I also take with me that, when it comes to reuse, recycling, also yield of mining, slag piles, next generation of batteries, in the end, we will need it all. The need for recycling is this big. And also that recycling is costly. So we need to rethink, is it a service that is provided, or is it a standalone business? But it must be worth it. Sustainability is about the environment, it's social sustainability, but also financial sustainability. And the fourth thing is, we need to recover all the materials in a battery, or as much as possible, having the vision of 100%, and to that collect it to get it done.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it seems like the Nordics are on the right track. I mean, we have a long history of recycling, a lot of experience from recycling. We're investing in recycling, and we also, of course, there are a lot of electric vehicles on the market already that then will be available batteries for recycling. So I think, yeah, I agree with you there.
Okay, so Robin, what happens now? The end of the first Nordic Battery Thursdays. What are we looking ahead towards?
Well, I would say tune in for the next Nordic Battery Thursdays, which will be on the 16th of June. And on the day before that, on the Electric Vehicle Summit in Oslo in Norway, there will be the Battery Day. So that will be on the 15th of June, and we will be present there from the Nordics. And then also we will have a pavilion, and so you can come and visit us at the stand on the battery show in Stuttgart on 28th to 30th of June. So a lot of those concrete events that are happening. But also if anybody is interested in working with Nordic companies or looking at investing in joining the ecosystem, feel free to reach out to us.